Just had another fantastic question asked via email. How do we handle the math of the mitered corners? Stick with me, I'll teach you how. That's right, you guessed it everybody. We have yet another Q&A based tutorial today. We are doing the math of the mitered corners. I am Rob Appell from Michael Miller Fabrics, official maker of fun right here on YouTube, and also the national sales manager at everybody's favorite fabric brand, Michael Miller, having a blast working with our refractions fabrics today. This is that wonderful ombre, that variegated fabric that I love so much, primarily because it's super cool in design. Secondarily, because it runs dark to light all the way across the 45. So that's kind of fun. Now, great fabric choice for most things, but you don't actually see kind of what I was trying to do with mitering our corners or mitering our, we're going to call this sashing for lack of better term. We're not really doing binding because it doesn't change the math as much, but we do need to change the math. And that was what the question was asked is, how much yardage do I need if I'm going to be adding a border to a square, but at that bordered square at the corner at that union, I'm going to get a miter. And yeah, that one's a little sloppy, and I'd like to say I did it on purpose, but no, I didn't. I just didn't do my best work. We'll talk about why that's a little sloppy. This one here is all but darn perfect. You don't see the way that the prints come together because that wasn't the intention, but you do see that we have a 45-degree, a mitered edge coming right off of this, and that can be really important for folks based on the design that they're doing. Maybe they're trying to change colors there, maybe they're trying to match stripes or some sort of polka dots or something really fun. There's a lot of amazing design-related techniques, so it's important that you all understand how to do this. So in order to teach you the math, I actually need to teach you all the technique, and maybe you've seen me do it before. Oh, and by the way, yeah, I'm a little ADHD right now, but maybe you saw me do this awesome Q&A. How do you get a half square checkered square triangle board kind of thing going here? So at any rate, that's why that's here, is to remind you that I'm loving doing these Q&A style videos, these tutorials to help all of you learn what you want to know from me specifically. So like I said, this came in as an email question. How do we calculate yardage necessary? Let me teach you the steps. Please keep those questions coming. Email is rob@michaelmillerfabrics.com. So in order to do this, we actually need to put on normally all four borders or side pieces, sashings to begin with, so that we can actually stop and leave ourselves at least a 1/4 inch back from the edge of the end of the square. And that's actually why that part down here became a little bit sloppy, is I didn't give myself enough working room. So I said, give yourself at least, if not more, a 1/4 inch at the working or the ending edge, because now what we're going to do together, we're going to put on this last strip. These are 2.5 inch wide strips, and it's really important that we remember that number in a while. But right now it's important that you simply know your trick this way is that your binding needs to go past the block or the square in the center, and it also needs to go past the new bindings that are coming on. So the answer is going to be, I always figure twice as much as the width of the binding. So in this strip, it is technically a 2.5 inch wide right now. So I'm going to give myself at least 5 inches greater than the size of my square. I'll map that out for you in a bit, but let's just again show you how this is going to work. I want my lights to touch my lights, my darks to touch my dark, so I just need to rotate this for right sides together. That's quilting, by the way. If you don't get right sides together, then maybe we should find you another craft. No, I'm kidding. Don't go anywhere. I want you to be here with me. And like I said, I'm afraid I know that I've touched that way at the end. So before I even go any further, let's deploy Grim. That's the seam ripper, by the way. Let's get him out of here and get down in here in this corner and just give myself a few more stitches to work with. Because if I sew that right to the end, it is going to make that really sloppy point. And that's not what we want. Let's get 2 or 3 stitches out of there. And that's what you do if you accidentally go too far. Don't force it. Go in, grab your ripper, take a couple of stitches back out. We're going to secure all of this again in a moment. Don't you worry about a thing. So now that that's out of the way, I can nicely lay right sides together, and I have been moving this around. So I'm just going to double check that this binding is going past this binding. FYI, if you can't tell, this binding has already been pressed open. Let's get to work here. So now, like I stopped before that 1/4 inch, I'm also going to start down a 1/4 of an inch into my blocker, basically at that same point if I can. Probably want to try to backstitch because we're going to be managing this fabric a little bit, manipulating this fabric a little bit. So it's best to lock that in. And now we're just going to do standard stitching, right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down, marrying forever this block and this sashing. And holy quiltrimony. Okay, so now as I come down to this end, remember right here is that 1/4 inch. I know that, I can feel that. I've pressed the seam out, but I really want to give myself just a little extra, maybe a thread or a needle's worth of play. So I'm going to back up from here, not exactly into that 1/4 inch. It's not going to affect it negatively. Cut the threads. So traditionally, like I said, I had to get a head start so I'd have something to talk about. I've always got something to talk about. Anyways, traditionally we put on all 4 pieces of sashing and then we'd begin the corner work. So you'd normally have all of these, with our next step being get the iron hot and come on over to the ironing surface. I'm going to press out. And once I get to the kind of the edge where the other pieces are, there's just kind of a little bit of a manipulation situation kind of thing happening. And now I'm going to bring this over here so you can really see it well on the camera, but I'll have to finish the work on the ironing surface because that is the real trick to how to make the miter and why we need twice as much length as we need the width of the binding. So what I'm going to now do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to turn it underneath, right sides together. Oops, got carried away. I'm just going to bend this up underneath, right sides together, looking for a couple of key points to help the 45 be truly a 45-degree angle. Had a straight line going here and a straight line going here. So now this straight line over here and this straight line up here. So the long edges of the binding or the sashing strips themselves, sashing or border strips themselves are running parallel, touching each other actually. And then the end piece here, you can see these edges are running nice and clean, nice and parallel as well. So now the trick is going to be is to set this line. And you can do it with a finger press, but this is where I usually do this technique on the ironing board. So I'm going to double check to make sure that all of my visual markers are just as I explained them a moment ago. And now I'm going to iron this from the top, setting a crease that will be my guideline for sewing. Bringing it back, you can see this is that creased line. That'll be the guideline for sewing. So at this point, I have a habit. I want to keep these pieces together. And if you're concerned, you don't want this top piece to move from the bottom piece. So what I'm going to do now is let's just grab a straight pin, and I could literally put a straight pin right through there to hold those layers. As I move this open, we're now going to just stitch right in that ironed seam. Coming over to the sewing machine, I start at the block or the corner where everything's together, and I'm going to stitch this way, avoiding that 1/4 inch seam allowance, and it looks like my needle may have come unthreaded when I wasn't looking. So the benefit of the needle threader on this machine is boom, boom, and varoom, we're ready to go again. And the disadvantage are these big floppy fingers. Okay, let's get going. Now, if you feel like you have in this section up here a lot of fabric that's coming apart, make sure things are organized, looking good, double checking your edges out along here to make everything's nice. And now we're just going to go ahead and stitch this, and I'm literally just sewing on that pressed line. That pressed line is just a guideline. Now I've got thread in my way. This is going to get ugly quick, folks. Now I also do encourage a little back stitching at the end. First step, remove the pin and just look at it. Make sure you're really pleased with the way everything has turned out up in your corner, right? If you are pleased, then you go to the iron and you're going to press it . Once it's pressed, you then come back in because you were making sure a second time at the pressing that you really were happy with your work. Once you're happy with your work, you can, with a 1/4 inch roughly seam allowance, remove the excess forever and ever. And now you are dialed in with that mitered corner. Pretty cool, right? So with that said, let me show you how to set this up one more time before we bring in our special guest to help explain the mathematics of this all over again. So what we're doing, I've got everything pressed open off of my block, border strip, border strip. I'm grabbing the top and I'm going to turn it upside down to go right sides together on the border, because remember, we're sewing the border to the border, checking this corner back in here in case I need to pull up or down, because you want it to come right out of your corner to begin with. Then I'm watching these edges line up nicely. And really, folks, the longer you give yourself, the better. Because if you don't give yourself enough, it becomes very hard to get this accurate and looking nice. So if I'm not trying to match specific fabrics, then I will actually give myself plenty to go long, and I just trim off these outside edges and use them for patches in another project. Okay, I'm stalling long enough. I've been talking. Got this dialed in here. Once again, back to the ironing surface to go ahead and set that seam so we can really see it. Over enough time, I've gotten pretty comfortable not to use a pin, but I'm going to pinch and I'm not going to let go as I get back over to my work surface here at the machine. Making sure everything's good back up in that corner. And away we go. Once I've got those stitches set, if I need to make any other adjustments, I certainly can. Let's back stitch to lock it in again. I'm going to come back over to the table, have a visual check. I've got my 45 running right out of my corner there. So again, press it to set it. Terrific, perfect, something like that. Come back in. Just be real careful while you're trimming this out. You don't want to cut into anything at this point that you don't want to. So trim that down there. Set that there like that. And now you all know the perfect way to install those border pieces into your projects, your squares. But let me bring out my special guest so that once again we can understand the mathematics of all of this together. Everybody, Dr. Appell.
Yes, I have it here. I have it here. I know the math.
No, man,
I know the math. Thank you very much. I have it. I got it. It's good. It's good. See, what we're going to do is you just start with what you have, and that's X, because what you have is the X, right? That's the box. That's a square. It's good. Good, yes? So then you take the strips. You need two. Well, two of these, but that's Y.
Are you
the strip
sure
is
about
Y.
that?
That's good too, I think. Very good. So with that, then you have two of those, but not because it's 1 and 2, but because you need 2 times because of the overlap, and that's what makes it. So Y is not tall, but wide, right? Y is, that's good, I think. And so 1 binding equals X plus 2Y. Right? That's good, very good. Now, but if you want 2 binding, that's a problem. Well, not a problem, you just start over, because 2 binding is 1x plus y's equals a square, and then those squares become a square that you start with x again for the y's with the 2, and 1 binding equals x plus 2y. Yes, it's very good. It's easy, very good. Thank you very much. Thank you. You got it? Okay. Next time I will see you.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.
Not quite sure.
Thank you very
That
much.
really helped,
Thank you,
but,
bye. Thanks again for being here, buddy, and we'll see you next time we really need help with the math. Sorry about that, folks. I do hope that helped. I think what he was trying to say is once you put the borders on, then it's just another square. So just keep doing the same thing over and over again by calculating the width of the border strip times 2. That gives you that extra length you need on those corners. And now you know the math, regardless of how many borders you're going to add to your block, as sashings, as borders, as bindings, however you're doing it, with your new, awesome, super professional mitered technique that you learned right here from Rob and yes, thank you very much.
Stitchology, and making it fun. Hey, we'll see you next time, folks. Thanks for being here today. Wow, you are still there. Thanks for sticking with me till the end of the video. I know, I get a little long-winded sometimes. But if you did enjoy today's video, make sure you check out a few of the other ones we've created. I think they're terrific. And of course, please subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the little bell to be notified. I don't want you to miss a moment of the fun. Stay safe and happy sewing.